At points, it looked like San Francisco was going to take home their 6th NFL title, but they choked it away. Here's how it all went wrong on the Locked On NFL podcast.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, football fans? It is the Locked On NFL podcast. It's Tuesday. That means you got me, Luke Braun, at Luke Braun NFL, and I'm here with David Harrison at DHarrison82. He does Locked On Commanders, Locked On Bucks. I do Locked On Vikings. But today we are talking a little bit about the Super Bowl. We're still kind of coming down off of the haze of the Kansas City Chiefs winning back-to-back Super Bowls. Yesterday, Kevin talked to you a little bit about that Chiefs dynasty, but I want to focus on the other side today and talk about the 49ers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. So, David, we had a lot of drama at the end of the Super Bowl. Very fun game for neutral observers like you or me, but for 49ers fans, another incredibly frustrating collapse. Kyle Shanahan, between the two Super Bowl appearances as head coach of the 49ers and that Atlanta game he was offensive coordinator for, at least a 10-point lead in all three of those games, L's in all three of those games. And it always does seem to come down to little situational missteps. Weird play call stuff that there's still stuff coming out about the 28-3 collapse, taking that sack, that holding penalty, those little things where, it takes you out of field goal range. You got to know not to do that. Those sorts of little mistakes. And it was no different on Sunday night, especially when things got to overtime. As we all know now, because the broadcast explained it to us, the overtime rules are different in the playoffs, and we'll see if the competition committee keeps that change for real. But instead of this thing where if you score a field goal, the other team gets a chance, but a touchdown is still a walk-off even on the first possession. Now it's just both teams get a possession. Both teams get a possession, and then it's all sudden death from there if it's still tied after both teams get a possession, which kind of changes the calculus on whether or not you should take the ball. 49ers do take the ball, even though that means they're not going to have that informational advantage. And there's a lot of nuance to that. I do want to get into it in a bit. But after the game, Chiefs go down, score the touchdown afterwards. They win the game. After the game, many 49ers players said, we didn't know that the overtime rules were different until they showed it on the Jumbotron in Allegiant Stadium, which feels like this incredible miss of preparation for every playoff game, right? This is just the one that went to overtime. But for every playoff game, how do you not know that? Did it change things? I don't know. What's your takeaway here? There's a lot of different angles to get into this overtime.
I mean, you never like making a public knowledge that, that you don't know something if you're at the highest level of any profession. You know what I mean? And obviously the NFL just has more eyes on it, but I don't care what profession you're in. If you're supposed to be the top dog of them, which obviously if you're in the Super Bowl, you're supposed to be, or if you're one of 32 NFL head coaches, people, there's an assumed expertise here, right? There's an assumed expertise about guys in the profession. I mean, we see it, Luke, every weekend. You see a former NFL quarterback get up on some stage, on some sound stage, and some show, and drop some hot take, and a person like you or me disagrees with them, and what are the comments inevitably possess? At least one comment in there. This guy used to play in the NFL. You don't know what you're talking about. Well, The truth of the matter is, just because you're in a profession does not actually make you the end all be all, know all, end of knowledge for any given thing. You know what I mean? Like I promise you, I've seen Tom Brady take a bad sack. I've seen Tom Brady make a bad read, throw a bad pass. Like there's been moments where you went, Tom, what are you doing? So, it happens to everybody, but man, it's never a good look, Now Kyle Shanahan kind of covered it up by saying like, we wanted the ball third, we score, they score. And then if you get to that situation, then the third score is the sudden death score. And we wanted to be in that situation. Yeah. Okay. I mean, isn't it impossible that that's his approach to it? No. But again, when it's peppered with all these other guys on your team saying like, we didn't know, that like, it just kind of, it's almost like wait, I got hacked. I didn't send that tweet type of moment.
It is. And So I think it's interesting because the coin flip decision is defensible. At least there's a logic to it, and you can agree or disagree with this, but it does seem like all the math people are like, it's kind of even, which to me says, A, that's a good rule change and they should keep it.
Right.
Because you've managed to mitigate, I think, to the biggest degree possible, the advantage of the coin flip. Now it's just somebody's got to go first, whatever, but we've managed to like balance it. I think that's good. But the as the logic goes, if you go first, you don't have the informational advantage. If you're the Chiefs, you go second, you need a touchdown because the 49ers scored a field goal. Or if they don't score, what that needs to be. If they do score a touchdown, you have to go for it on that 4th and 1. You don't get to punt on that 4th and 1. If it's the second quarter, maybe the Chiefs punt there. And similarly, if the 49ers knew that they needed a touchdown to win the game, maybe they don't kick on 4th and 3 down there. Maybe they, now they have to go for it. Maybe things turn out differently, right? Having that information and being able to tailor your decisions to it is an advantage. That said, there are enough scenarios possible where you indeed tie the game and you go in tied, and now you have the same sudden death advantage that teams used to have way back in the day when it was just true sudden death. And mathematically, those two things balance out. And so you also have to consider, the defense had just gone on a really, really long drive. They might have been tired. They might have needed a little bit of time. I get it for why you took the ball. But when you get down to the last play, right, that corn dog motion thing that's now going to become such a thing, the way that the 49ers played that and the aggressiveness with which they responded to that motion, to me, read like a team that thought it was the last play of the game, not a team that understood that if that were an incomplete pass, they would have switched sides, set the clock to 10 minutes again, and kept going, or 15 or whatever. Right. So that's the situational awareness, which isn't as tangible a decision. It's like, how hard do you play the motion, or what coverage do what coverage tags do you end up calling? But defenses will coach differently in 2-minute than in neutral situations. In 2-minute, you don't necessarily have as many checks and calls. Things simplify a little bit because you're also kind of anticipating the offense to have simplified looks, and you don't want miscommunications in the big spot, right? So there's differences in the way that you'll structure things in 2-minute and in red zone and all that stuff. The 49ers thought they were in 2-minute, but functionally they were not in 2-minute. It was just first down. So Kansas City's calling a first down play call. San Francisco's calling their end game play call. That's way different. So that sort of awareness is really important still, just maybe not necessarily in the way that got the most visibility. But it's like this really bad communication error. And it's just the operation of the 49ers just seems to kind of fall apart a whole bunch in those big spots. Even go to the NFC Championship games, like against the Rams, and the Eagles is a different deal. But like the NFC Championship against the Rams too, like some of those same things. So I think that that is as much as I love Kyle Shanahan as a schemer and as somebody who I think has revolutionized the NFL by thinking about it more effectively than anybody else in the league. Like not just a scheme boy, like in the way that, Ben Johnson is, but like a true revolutionary of the game. You still have the how can I manage an operation question. And that's a different question. And it's a different skill set.
Yeah, and I think that's where, honestly, I think most head coaches would probably, they'll never publicly say it, but I think that's where some of your quality control coaches come in, your offensive advisors, your defensive. Yeah. People have so many coaches on staff now. Like I'm watching the Washington Commanders and they're hiring dudes. And I'm like, where are you going to put this guy? Like, oh, he's going to have an advisor role. It's like, okay, we're just paying him to talk football with us, basically, is what's happening. And that's great. But like someone, like at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like there's supposed to be every task is supposed to have someone who's supposed to be on top of that. So who's on top of this task? Because you're right, because Kyle Shanahan, I like Coach Shanahan. I think that he is one of the better coaches of his day, but he is, I'm honestly a little bit surprised, Luke, in today's world of interconnectivity and social media, and everybody's got information right at the tip of their fingertips, that nobody is talking about how Coach Shanahan just does not finish. And it's funny because I actually had this conversation once with Ross Jackson, your usual co-host on this day, where the Chargers fired a coach
storm right now, I think.
And he's in the middle of a winter storm apparently, which I'm sure in New Orleans is like, it's windy, but it's effective. Yeah. But we had this conversation. The Chargers just got done firing a coach, and we're like, well, if you look at Kyle Shanahan's record, like his record is not any different than this Chargers coach who just got ran out of town. Like San Diego is like, get out of here and don't even visit, don't even buy a postcard with our picture on it. and the 49ers are about to extend Kyle Shanahan. And the only difference was, and don't get me wrong, it's a big difference, so it makes sense. But the only difference was one Super Bowl trip and one loss at that. But when you look at the totality of the work, the two guys were the exact same, getting the exact same production out of their teams. And you just worry, is Kyle Shanahan eventually going to earn this label of a guy who can make really good teams, but can never make the best team?
Yeah, and it only takes one to shake it. Go win one Super Bowl and you shook it, right? We never talk about that with Sean McVay anymore, right?
Right.
Which we had this same conversation about him after 2018. And until he won, we had that conversation about him. One thing that's interesting, and it's not a lot of talk about Brock Purdy at all, which I think is a win for Brock Purdy. Because when you're losing Super Bowl quarterback and you're not the guy getting talked about, you probably played all right. And I think he played just fine. And it's funny, again, this time last year, everybody was kind of looking at the 49ers as, well, it's not going to be that again. It's right. the time is over. And usually it is for someone. Obviously, people were wrong there about the 49ers. They won the NFC. But there's always someone that doesn't make it back, and there's always someone that surges and surprises. And that is who we're going to talk about next. Perhaps the 4 playoff teams that are going to change it out.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by DoorDash. The Kansas City Chiefs are back-to-back champs, and it was a very entertaining football game, for the most part at least. It started off a little bit slow unless you love defensive football, but it got going. And as usual, the commercials were also a great part of the show, added a little dimension to what you were watching. DoorDash went all out for game day, and they sent stuff from all of the ads to one lucky winner. That winner got cars, snacks, even tax software. Somehow they pulled it all off. I'm pretty sure Luke didn't win. I know that I didn't win, but it was still a heck of delivery by DoorDash. And DoorDash is your all-in-one app for your everyday needs, from restaurants and groceries to flowers and gifts. So the next time you're running low on dinner ideas or pet supplies, or just running out of time, you can get so much more than you realize delivered straight to you. Did you not have a chance to hit the grocery store? DoorDash can help you out for that. Football season may be over, but we're in the thick of basketball games, the school year. And let's face it, winter. Ross Jackson's facing a storm right now in NOLA. Maybe he doesn't want to go out and get his favorite whatever they eat in New Orleans that I'm not aware of. I can think of a million reasons daily to order DoorDash. So hop on the app and make your day a little bit easier. Get dinner for tonight, groceries for the week, or a consolation prize for your sad friends in San Francisco, all on DoorDash. DoorDash, your door to more. Head to the DoorDash app to get everything you need delivered.
Thank you so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. Each and every single day, we're here with you Monday through Friday. If you are just still craving some more sports content, we know football is over, but Locked On Sports Today, covering all sports, and they have a 24/7 YouTube live stream. So if you work on a computer and you can throw it on in the background, make it your kind of background listening. It's like having sports radio on for you all day long. Go to Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel. You can find that there. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, it should just take you there right afterwards. You don't have to lift a finger. So, David, you had an interesting thought here before we start. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. And every year, I want to say the average is 4 teams that are different from year to year. If you think about, well, this was what was in my head when it was 12 playoff teams. It's probably more now that it's 14 playoff teams. 14 playoff teams, but just to keep it simple, let's say there's 4 teams that are going to change out. Let's try to make a completely insane call, half-court shot, to see if we can't predict who they will be here on February 13th is when this is going to go out. And let's see if we can figure out who they are going to be. I will let you start. Give me one who's out and one who will replace them.
I'm going to start a little bit hot here. I'm going to start almost towards the top of the NFC. Not at the top, although they looked like they were going to be at the top when they were 10-1, ended up finishing 11-6, and the Philadelphia Eagles season turned south in a heartbeat. And everything that Jason Kelce is doing right now points to him retiring. And for those who don't know, Jason Kelce calls the protections, calls the slides, calls all that stuff, coordinates the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles, not Jalen Hurts. And now, to be fair, it seemed like down the stretch there were some disagreements, or maybe they just weren't seeing things the same way. Jason was calling one thing, Jalen was reacting to another, and they certainly seem to be off the same page. But that's a big blow when you lose your guy who literally directs your entire offensive line. He's the center. That center quarterback exchange is always super important. So if they're going to start with a free agent or a rookie, like, that's a big deal. You look at what's going on around the coaching staff. Nick Sirianni, I think, is his confidence and approval rating is at an all-time low after what happened during the last season. And honestly, it just looked to me, I mean, some of the Nick Sirianni hate, Luke, spread over to Dan Campbell, who had also never been a coordinator, Nick Sirianni, and never been a play calling coordinator, I should say, before becoming a head coach. And it just became evident that when his coordinators were in the weeds, Nick Sirianni just didn't know how to get them out of the weeds, didn't know how to direct them to get out of there. And basically those coordinators were just left out there sitting in the storm all by themselves while their captain was sitting up on the dock saying, hey, buddy, get out here and do the right thing. So he goes out and hires some guys who presumably don't need him to hold their hand as much as Brian Johnson and Sean Desai obviously needed them to, and that's fine. But then you got Hassan Reddick requesting a trade. That's not a good sign for the defensive side of things of what's going on inside that organization. There's rumors that A.J. Brown may want out. I mean, there's just a lot going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. And oh, by the way, you know, the bread and butter of your team, your quarterback, got figured out a little bit there at the end of last season. So now you got to figure out a new way to make Jalen Hurts effective, where he's got to figure out a new way, or else the things are not going to go well for the Philadelphia Eagles. So, I mean, you know, they're the fifth seed in the NFC, one of the better teams still, double-digit win team still. But I think that there is a possibility where some of these other teams start to rise up a little bit. You know, the NFC South has got a pretty easy slate of scheduled games. So even if it's just because of that, they might find themselves looking out of the playoffs next year. And I think if I got to look at one team specifically to say this is the team that could replace them, a little bit of a surprise to some, but I got to go with, and I hope I'm not stealing yours, but I'm going to go with your Minnesota Vikings. Nobody can call you a homer.
You were not.
Talk about the Minnesota Vikings. And I really feel like if they didn't have to go through all the quarterback stuff that they did end up having to go through, then maybe they would have been able to challenge for the Super Bowl, for the playoffs this year. And so that's a little bit of a, I don't want to call it an easy take, but it's like a team that potentially could have made the playoffs if they were able to stay healthy. Is not exactly the hottest take, but I think the Eagles is probably where my take gets a little bit hot there.
I think you're the first ever non-Vikings fan to say that, so I'm not going to argue with you. Instead, I'm gonna keep looking at that NFC South, and I see the NFC South. Look, the Buccaneers have won it 3 years in a row. 2 of those were with Brady. They are, I mean, you tell me, they seem really likely to hang on with Baker Mayfield, right, and run things back again with as much of that team as they can put together. But I look at that NFC South and I see so much opportunity for change. New offensive coordinator in New Orleans, new quarterback in Atlanta, new coaching everything in Carolina. And I see, I was talking about this with Locked On Falcons with Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. And I went on Locked On Falcons to talk about the idea of Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. And it's just an idea that makes so much sense. If he doesn't end up staying in Minnesota goes and takes a rookie quarterback. I could see Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons and taking them to a nice 10-win, NFC South title and supplanting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That feels like it's going to be that there's always that division that just everyone beats the crap out of each other and they all end up with like 8 or 9 wins and it comes down to tiebreakers. And that always feels like it's the NFC South. They all have to play each other and it's going to come down to those NFC South, in divisional games, of course. But I see the Falcons replacing the Buccaneers. That's going to be the call that I make.
I mean, that's interesting because like you said, the Atlanta Falcons won 7 games with terrible quarterback play.
Yeah, terrible quarterbacking. And now they've got new coaching and everything. It's like a lot of change. Yeah. And odds are an upgrade at quarterback over like Desmond Ridder, right? At least likely, not guaranteed, but likely. I don't know. Let's see it.
I mean, if it's Kirk Cousins, it's definitely an upgrade over Desmond Ridder and certainly a guy that could do some damage.
Well, maybe they slam dunk maybe they trade up with your Washington Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. We'll see. Yeah. I mean, I do know this. I'm gonna be talking to a lot of people when it comes time for our NFL channel mock draft special this year. I've already got plans in mind to talk to a bunch of people. So certainly feasible there. Flip
3
over to the AFC
picks on the table.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look,
everybody to know it.
We're gonna look to wheel and deal, man. We're gonna look to make some damage or do some damage during this mock draft. Commanders fans probably gonna need to listen to multiple episodes of that bad boy to get everything that's going down. So
let's go. We're
going to create some special everydayers over there. But on the AFC thing, on the AFC side of things, I mean, I'm going to take some low hanging fruit here. And I'm going to go, you know what? No, I'm not. I'm going to leave the low hanging fruit for you if you want to take it. I'm going to actually go with a take that I hate. And I think that is the Houston Texans. I think the Houston Texans could definitely be at risk of falling out of the playoffs next year, even though they were in the, and I love them. And I love CJ Stroud. I love Coach Ryan's. Like, I don't want to see it, believe me. But here's the thing. The Jacksonville Jaguars, this is, I don't say it's a make or break year for like Doug Peterson and everything going on there, but you almost kind of feel like this is a year where they got to make a push. They got to deliver on some of this potential. So they're going to come out, with a fire in their bellies. The Indianapolis Colts are going to get Anthony Richardson back, and they're going to do some other things to potentially add to their team. So I just feel like the AFC South is going to be coming after them more. And I've always said this, Luke, it's really hard to win games in the NFL. It's really hard to have a good season in the NFL. It's even harder to do it twice. And next year, no one's sleeping on the Houston Texans, right? CJ Stroud said it at one point in time. I can't remember which AFC South team it was. It might have been the Jags, actually. First time he played him, he said they treated me like a rookie quarterback. Second time, they didn't. Now, he won both those games, from, if my memory serves correctly, the team he was talking about. But not only did that team learn their lesson, the entire NFL, they're going to see CJ Stroud. They're going to see Bobby Sloak. They're going to see DeMeco Ryans coming next year. How do they continue to surprise people? Because at the end of the day, that's the name of the game in the NFL is innovation. You can't just do things the same exact way every single year and expect to get better. Just ask the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, for sure. Boy, there's a part of me that wants to say the Bills just to be spicy about it, but I'm not going to do that because you left me the low hanging fruit. I don't have to be that spicy. I mean, there's a lot of weirdness going on in the AFC North, right? But I don't really see the Browns doing this again. They really felt like they had lightning in a bottle with that defense. Obviously, year to year, keeping defense up like that is incredibly difficult. It almost never happens to see like defenses be super, super dominant year to year to year to year. I mean, they had this Joe Flacco Linsanity run and all this, like all of these incredibly unsustainable things that happened. And I just don't know what's up with Deshaun Watson over there. And they seem like they're in this really, really, really tough spot where they probably still have no choice but to just kind of buy further into Deshaun Watson and what he can do. And I think that year off seems and everything that went on seems to have had some kind of effect. And I don't know if you're getting that same Deshaun Watson that, we all were in love with before we #knew about it. So I don't know if I see the Browns pulling off what they pulled off. But you know who I see coming back from the dead a little bit to maybe take a wild card spot if the Ravens win the division again, or maybe the Bengals make take another crack at it, which could be an interesting answer. But instead, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. New head coach, still have Justin Herbert. They have a roster that I think got overrated. I think I'm guilty of overrating it a little bit, and I'm trying to dial that back a little bit. But at the same time, I just still believe in Justin Herbert's ability to win a bunch of regular season games. And let's see if we can get out there in a wild card game. I mean, look, it's really hard when you're in the AFC West. We know who's winning the AFC West every year, but there's 3 wild card spots. 5-12, they weren't that bad. They weren't 5-12 bad. And I don't think they're 5-12 bad again. I think that there's definitely a world where the Chargers can pop in. Yeah. So with that, we can move on to our yike and our like of the week. So we're going to go right into that.
This episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers, you get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. And currently, for Tuesday, the Boston Celtics are 8.5-point favorites on the road against the Brooklyn Nets, while the Oklahoma City Thunder are also road favorites when they face off against the Orlando Magic. But if you want to be slick, you can potentially take the Detroit Pistons plus 12, so 12-point underdogs against the Los Angeles Lakers, and then just cross your fingers and hope that Los Angeles rests a bunch of people in the fourth quarter and keeps it closer than it should be. But whether you want to do those bets, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and even more things, just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Moving right along here with this Locked On NFL episode, it is time for our weekly tradition, our yike and our like of the week. I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to take the pop culture thing from you, David. My like of the week goes not to the mania of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and the pop culture moment that it is, but one specific shot that I thought was just beautiful of Taylor Swift nervously just demolishing her nails, which for a cultural icon of that size and visibility, she was into it. Oh, she is so locked in now. and she grew up an Eagles fan, so like she's used to the sports fandom thing, but you can tell she's seasoned. She knows this is not her first rodeo of football fandom. And I said it at the outset of this whole like cultural phenomenon, and I'm going to say it again. I think it's just really cool to get an influx of new fans, a whole bunch of people learning about football for the first time. I think that's good for the sport. I think it rules. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, look, people have their opinions, and that's fine. I'm never going to tell anybody they don't have the right to their opinion. But it reminded me, quite honestly, of when Tom Brady came to Tampa, and a whole bunch of people were, your old head Buccaneers fans, which they're few and far between. So, like, you deserve all the kudos in the world if you are truly
anyone who survived the 70s and 80s. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, you deserve your props. Don't get me wrong, but they're like, oh, all the Brady fans coming over, and now we got so many comments of like, oh, I'm a Pats fan, but now I'm a Bucks fan, and people are like, oh, go away, we don't want you. It's like, no, what are you talking about, man? The more the merrier. Get on the ship, get on the whatever you want to call it, and just embrace it, man. And this whole Taylor Swift thing, I mean, we see JJ McCarthy's father touching his girlfriend's butt, and we see like the parents of Brock Purdy, and we see random fan number one in the Charger Stadium, and nobody cares. But you put Taylor Swift on the board, and all of a sudden it's a national crime to show fans on the board. I don't have a problem with it. I absolutely like it. So I'm with you on that one, Luke. And also some people just hate love. I don't know, man. I don't know why, but some people just hate it. And I'm not even saying they're in love, to be honest with you. I don't know their relationship status. Anyway,
they just like the CIA psyop,
Yeah. I mean, you know what? People were like, maybe Travis is going to propose to her on the Super Bowl field if they win. I was like, that would actually be a pretty epic moment. I'm not gonna lie, but
I'm pretty sure FanDuel had that.
Did they? Nice. That's one heck of a prop.
Maybe.
Yeah, I probably would have. I mean, if they did, I hope people would know, because anyway, I don't want to dive too deep into it, but like the way that their relationship even developed, like Travis was very hush hush about it. I don't see Travis going from not really wanting to share my personal life to proposing to her on the football field. So anyway, that's a whole other conversation that doesn't need to happen anymore anyway. But my Luke, and this is where people can call me Homer if you want to. It doesn't matter. I'm actually not a born and bred Washington fan. I happen to cover the team and all these things. But this coaching staff, I'll be honest with you, Dan Quinn was not my number one choice. I don't think he was anyone's number one choice. But speaking to him, looking a little bit more into him, understanding that Adam Peters, the general manager of the Washington Commanders, came from San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan knows Adam Peters pretty stinking well, also knows Dan Quinn pretty well. There's probably some sort of connection there, some sort of conversation that was had behind closed doors. I love the bringing Joe Witt Jr. over from the Dallas Cowboys to be his defensive coordinator, and Dan Quinn being a true head coach, not running his own defense, but obviously having the style brought over so he knows how to correct it. And then I actually have grown to enjoy the fact that Cliff Kingsbury is coming over as the offensive coordinator. I'm still, I'm not saying pessimistic, but I'm a little bit of a holding pattern, but I'm in a happier holding pattern than I was when it was first announced. But then you got special teams coordinator Larry Izzo. You got Bobby Johnson coming over as an offensive line coach that people are hating because the Giants' offensive line was terrible. So I'm super excited to dive into that hire and see if I can find the silver lining there. Tavita Pritchard was kept as the quarterback coach. Big fan of his. Ken Norton Jr. I mean, that like little me, football fan me, is just going nuts over Ken Norton Jr. being a coach on the coaching staff that I cover. Ryan Kerrigan is staying. John Pagano is coming over. Anytime you have Pagano on your staff, you're just bound to be good. And Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator, is now coming to the Washington Commanders with all those issues that happened in Philly. You got a very mad offensive coordinator who probably felt like he got left out in the cold, come into Washington. I really just like the staff that the Commanders are putting together. Again, none of it equals wins yet, but I have to tip my cap to a first-time NFL owner, his first offseason. He's completely reshaping the organization. And I think right now, just at least on paper, which in February is all we have, he is killing it.
I love it. It's about time Washington became the stable, responsibly well-led franchise that they used to be back in the day. Back to their dignified roots. Screw it. I'm going to do another like. I'm in a good mood. I enjoyed the Super Bowl a lot. I just want to give a shout out to Trent McDuffie. What a game.
Yes.
What a resurgence. All-pro Trent McDuffie. I keep seeing highlights of him like ducking Trent Williams, not to mention the stuff he did in coverage, the major plays in the big moments, that blitz on 3rd and 4. Just a lot of really cool, really veteran stuff. And it made me go remember back, because I wasn't the biggest McDuffie fan of his of coming out. So maybe I could give myself a yike for that one. But I think it was more of a scheme. If I remember, my point was more about like Viking scheme fit and stuff. Because I remember thinking like, this dude's so smart. Like he plays such a smart brand, such a veteran brand of football. And that's really coming into its own now in just year 2. Possible premier corner for the Chiefs, who have L'Jarius Sneed slated to hit free agency now. So what a great time for them. Try to keep this dynasty up and go for the first ever NFL Super Bowl 3-peat.
I mean, look, I'm a big fan. You know what I mean? He had a really great game. And one of the smaller parts of this, you talk about that blitz, dude went up in the air on that blitz. You know what I mean? You're not going to get to the quarterback's on the ball, get your hands up, get up there, try to bat that thing down. And time after time, how many times have we seen veterans go up in the air, come down? What do? They smack the quarterback on the head, gives him 15 yards, give him a new set of down. McDuffie, you watch that play and he's in the air and realizes I could be really, really bad right now. Makes a very smart body adjustment in the air and make sure that he comes down clean. And I mean, it's in the biggest moment, in the biggest game, a second-year player, like you said, Luke. I mean, I think Trent had a really great game. Same thing. I wasn't a fan of him as a fit for the Buccaneers coming out. Wasn't really a fan of the Commanders going that way either, but liked the player in a vacuum. Really happy to see him doing well. I am going to go with the yike here, and the yike that I have is Philadelphia Eagles receiver, speaking of drama from Philly, A.J. Brown tweeting about Travis Kelce in the middle of the game and about what would have happened if it was him that, physically and verbally assaulted Andy Reid, which I don't disagree necessarily with the take, but then deleting the tweet and having his buddy Darius Slay tweet out there, I spoke to AJ, that wasn't him, and then having that same Twitter account go, no, guys, this is a fan account now. I took it from him, but I'll give it back if he gives me a signed jersey, bro. Stop.
Oh, Jesus Lord.
And look, is it impossible that it happened? No, it's not impossible that it happened, but it's just like the overtime thing. I mean, look, at the end of the day, man, whether you were hacked or not, here's the bottom line. If a wild tweet goes out from a celebrity Twitter account, we all pretty much expect one of two things: either rabid defense of it, which only makes it worse, or I got hacked. And nobody believes either one of them. So just leave it alone, bro. And then Darius coming out there and just a one tweeter, talk to AJ, wasn't him. Okay. Thanks.
All right, bud.
Thanks for that. Thank you. It was just crazy.
It
was such a footnote, but I mean, yikes, bro. Like first of all, you actually kind of had a point. He didn't take it to a race level, but some other guys took it to a race level, but like he kind of has a point. I mean, AJ did things that were 10 times not as impactful as what Kelce did on the sideline. It was absolutely roasted for during the NFL season. So you know what I mean? Like he actually had a point, but like to then try to backtrack it and play the whole my account got stolen and all this other stuff. Like, it's just wild.
Yeah, get out of here. Interesting couple weeks online for the Philadelphia Eagles. My eyes glazed over listening to social media drama, which means it's time. Thank you all for listening to the Locked On NFL podcast. We will, of course, be back tomorrow, so we will see you all next time.